Much. And good morning. Look, I'll kick off my usual question. I'm just wondering, have you had any notifiable breaches of the Defence Control Act since I last asked the question?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator, no.
Is that a no?
That's a no.
It's a no, thank you. I just wanted to just get the sort of scale of work clear in terms of the committee. You recently told the Joint Committee on Intelligence Security that you had 57 individual grants from university where there had to be a recovery of money over the period 2016 to 2020. Have I understood that correctly?
Just one moment, Senator. We'll get the appropriate officer. So, Senator, we don't doubt the number. We don't have that exact number with us, but...
Well, I just want to, you'll see the line of argument in a moment. I'm quoting directly from it, so you have to take my word for it that I haven't misread it. I just want to get it clear. You see, that's a 4-year period. Now, you administer about $800 million a year on average, so that's $3.2 billion in grants across 43 institutions. I'm just trying to tell me where I'm wrong. 75% of those grants involve international collaboration. That'd be right. That's certainly from
80, yes.
Yeah, about my time. That's about right. You've got a success rate of about 20% these days. That'd be about right.
About right.
So that probably involves, in terms of funding, about 3,000 or so scholars, but the applicants would be obviously 4 times that number.
A lot of applications are by teams.
So tens of thousands of applicants in that number over that period of time. And you've got 57 individuals, grants, where money had to be repaid. So that's on that basis in terms of applications, because if you look at the paperwork before you, that's less than 0.2%. And that's certainly consistent with what the National Audit Office said about your administrative systems, isn't it?
Certainly the Audit Office was broadly happy with our administration of systems.
Broadly happy. It gave you a clean bill of health.
They did.
A strong, very strong endorsement, I thought. I'm just wondering how many of those 57 grants involve security questions?
We will have to take that on notice, Senator.
Well, let me tell you, you told the Joint House Committee none.
Okay.
None. And you also told the Joint Committee that you have no expertise in security.
We're not a security agency.
You're not a security agency, fair enough too. And in fact, it's not part of your criteria for the awarding of grants. You are experts, according to your own charter, in excellence in research, aren't you?
Indeed.
Yes. So I just want to get all that clear. There's been no evidence of systemic fraud in the system?
No, Senator, and certainly money is recalled for a variety of reasons. That's not necessarily a focus on national security.
Well, in fact, none.
Indeed.
None, you said.
So I can see now what you're referring to.
Yeah.
We've recovered funding on approximately 57 individual grants. None of these related to a breach of national security.
That's right.
They related to issues such as expenditure on ineligible items,
Yes.
Leaving the country for extended periods of time, having a dual appointment in the case of fellowships.
Right. So they've breached some of the guidelines which
Yes.
have been in place for as long as I can remember. Have there been any substantive changes in the guidelines in the period, the declaration period?
There's usually tweaks to the guidelines,
yes,
but nothing substantive.
No substantive changes. Certainly, again, since my time, there were always cases of individuals that mucked up their applications, weren't they? And claimed for things that they weren't supposed to claim for, or went overseas when they didn't have approvals for. I mean, not necessarily with China.
No, as you say, ineligible items of expenditure, and we'll work with the individuals and university.
So I just want to get the context straight in terms of what you actually do, as distinct from the way in which there's been reporting of your activities. Now, there were 669 grants recommended to the Minister on the 1st of October 2020. How many of those had sensitivity concerns, is the term that you're now using? I'm just wondering when that became part of the guidelines.
Senator, I'll defer to one of my colleagues for the detail, but in terms of sensitivities, we have always briefed the relevant minister about anything that's in the public domain when we recommend grants.
So that's what you mean by sensitivity?
That's a sensitivity.
Something that's controversial?
Yes,
I
indeed.
might draw...
It's a no surprises brief.
Yes. It doesn't mean that they're traitors to the country or anything?
Certainly not.
No. How many of them contain concerns about academic excellence?
So, Senator, the ARC peer review process uses a process of expert review by credentialed experts in the disciplines, and the low success rate means we do fund highly ranked applications.
So you recommended all of those grants, didn't you, for
Yes, Senator.
Yes, that's right. So they met all your criteria in terms of expertise, in terms of academic.
Our powers as Commonwealth officials are around the grant guidelines.
Could you tell me which of the universities had an opportunity to respond to the ARC regarding these so-called sensitivities prior to the Minister making his decision about those grants from the October 2020 round? What date? And
I will ask my colleague.
Yep.
Kathy Dent, Acting Branch Manager, Policy and Strategy, ARC. In relation to the Discovery Project's applications in the round you're referring to, when ARC was doing its initial due diligence checking of those applications, we did approach the administering organisations, that is the universities that submitted the applications, requesting advice and information where we'd deemed there could be a potential sensitivity.
how many were there? How many universities did you have to approach about sensitivities?
I'll just see if we've got that information, Senator.
Sorry, Senator, we won't be a moment.
So the information I have with me, Senator, is that there were 17 applications, but in some cases applications were at more than one institution, so there were less institutions contacted than 17.
Right. Can you give me the number, please?
We might have to take that on notice.
Come back to me. Maybe if it means just you've got to look through your brief. We don't have
that information with us. It will
see.
be straightforward to get it for you.
All right. How long did you give them these? There were 17 grants that were affected by sensitivities. How long did they have to respond?
Senator, we are recalling, without having the information here, we think it was in the order of a week. We can check that exactly if you'd like
If you would,
us to.
please. Thank you.
Yes.
And then did you provide those responses to security agencies?
I believe we did.
Thank you. Now, the Minister's press release in November of 13th, on November 13th, stated he was awaiting advice from the security agencies. So when was that advice provided to the security agencies?
So, Senator, as indicated in that media release by the Minister requested ARC to seek security advice following that media release.
So it was the Minister that asked you for the security advice, did it?
For the ARC to seek security advice from the Australian security agencies.
So you acted on ministerial instruction in effect.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. Did ASIO play a role in reviewing the grants?
Senator, I'm recalling we have worked with different security agencies and we have worked with ASIO. I'm unclear. Sorry, Senator.
Yeah. So our information was provided to Home Affairs. Whether or not they consulted ASIO, we are not aware.
Did you get to see what Home Affairs' response was to the... I had 18 grants down here, and the total was the total withheld at the time. You say 17 now, is it?
Oh, there's 17 discovery projects and 1 linkage project.
So there were 18 in
18
total.
altogether.
I'm not wrong about that, then,
No.
right? Okay. So did you get to see the assessments from Home Affairs?
We did.
I see. Thank you. Now, so there was a 2-week delay between when the Minister rejecting 5 applications in the end and the applicants being advised of their rejections. Can you tell me why that was?
Senator, with all ministerial decisions, firstly it's the decision of the Minister and notification is following that ministerial decision, not before.
I see. So, but I'm just understanding this. The Minister had made a decision, and did he instruct you not to tell the applicants that he had made a decision?
Oh, no, Senator, we will tell applicants when we're able to do so. We certainly were not in the process of making our own decision to hold on to things.
So then, why was there a delay of 5 days? That's my question.
Senator, I'm happy that we take that on notice and get the detail.
Sorry, not 5 days. So 5 applications. Why was there a 2-week delay?
Yeah.
To the day, in fact, the Minister left office. What was the reason for the delay? That's my question to you.
I'm not able to answer the detail of what is a ministerial decision, Senator.
And the ARC was late in responding to the Senate order in regard to the ARC grant recommendations. Who signed off on that order?
So, Senator, I always clear it, like everything else going out of the ARC, and it's an order on the Minister. So we provide the supporting documentation to the Minister.
Which Minister signed off on it? Was it Minister Tehan or Minister Tudge?
I believe it was Minister Tehan, but again, we can check.
Can you please confirm which one you're talking about?
I'm talking about the order that was due in December 2020. It was due in 2020. It was late, though.
I believe it was Minister Tehan, but we will confirm that.
Can you advise the committee as to why it was late?
I'm not able to, Senator.
Well, can you take that on notice? Because that was due on the 15th as well. And that was late. Was an attempt made to disguise the actions of the Minister?
Oh, Senator, we're public officials. We
don't know that, yes. That's a fair response to that question. And could I ask you, in regard to the evidence that you presented to the Joint Committee, you say that you're providing, you're now keeping files on academics. How long have you been doing that?
Senator, did we say that?
Yes, you do.
We are asking applicants for grants to make more disclosures in addition to the sorts that we would previously have asked them to.
Yes.
And that includes some foreign support questions.
Yes. So how long have you been keeping files on individual academics?
In that context, it is about conflicts of interest for all applicants, and that's been happening for many years.
Mm-hmm. So you've kept individual files on academics for many years. Is that what you're telling the committee?
It's the process of application, Senator, where it is about declaring interests that an individual might have that could be perceived as affecting a grant outcome.
And I could clarify there, Senator, that when you're talking about a file, we have a research management system, an electronic system, where we collect information on any participants in applications as well as the application information, and it's their profile in that system that has this information.
So it's a profile?
It's a profile that they use then to populate applications when they wish to participate in new applications for the ARC.
Yes. Can I just come back to the previous question I asked you about the return to order? What date was it signed off on? Could you give me that information?
On which senator?
The return to order
The Senate
that I spoke of.
We'll just see if we can get that date.
Yeah, sure, something. Now, in regard to the record keeping that you've indicated to the Joint House Committee, you're saying that you just keep profiles. Is that what you're suggesting to us now?
So, Senator, when people apply, they put in information about themselves in the system that covers a range, as I said, of conflicts of interest, as well as essentially their CV, which is held in the system now as well.
Yeah, their personal details, including their employment history, their fields of research, a number of items that then get drawn into the application form, so they don't need to complete that information every time they submit an application.
I'm just looking at the hand side here. It suggested that you keep records on individuals. Is that right?
Individuals as applicants.
Yeah, they're individual profiles, they're person profile.
So when they apply for funding, you're keeping records on just what the biographical details? What's the nature of the records you're keeping?
So, Senator, applications ask for a certain amount of personal information, and our system now allows someone to curate that. And as my colleague said, the idea is they don't have to keep putting it in afresh every time they make an application. So it's held in the system for that purpose.
I see. When you develop these profiles, do you add to it in between grant applications? Is it updated? What sort of maintenance is kept of these files?
So we ask researchers to keep their profiles up to date if there's been significant changes, for example, their employment history, they've changed institutions. Mm-hmm. But what happens is they upload into each grant application and we capture that information at the time of application. Mm-hmm. So it may change over time, but we have a capture of that information at the time of application that has been populated into an application form.
And do you keep newspaper articles, for instance, on the file as well?
No, Senator.
No?
No. No.
So what happens with this information ARC collects from universities? What do you do with that?
If you're talking about the declarations that researchers make, that is visible to the administration, research office of the university and to us as the ARC, not to assessors. And the idea is that those additional disclosures assist the university in their due diligence to meet the UFIT guidelines.
Do you keep records on sensitivities?
That I would need.
Senator Carr, after this I will need to go to Senator Faruqi and then Senator Rennick, and then I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Senator, in the sense that we keep a record of briefs, but as we go through each grant...
briefs?
In our documentation that I clear and that then goes to the Minister, each time we do that for a batch of grant, we will do a scan for new sensitivities.
I see. And those sensitivities, that's what I'm interested in, that's kept on individual researchers, is it?
It could be a range of things that are contained in sensitivities. It may or may not be about individuals. It could be about institutions.
Senator, if you'd like me to come back to the Senate order and the who signed it and what date?
Yes, well, if you can, please.
Minister Tehan signed the Senate order on the 22nd of December.
What we might do is go to Senator Faruqi. Senator Faruqi.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here to answer our questions. At the last Senate hearings, I asked about 2 research projects that had not received grant funding as part of Minister Tudge's announcement in February, even though the ARC had recommended them. I understand that they were approved last Friday, the 28th of May. Yep. What explains this 3-month delay?
that would be a question for the Minister, Senator.
Minister, then that's a question for you. Does the government plan to make any statement about what delayed the project approval from the Minister?
I'd have to take that one on notice.
But there has been no announcement made as yet as to what the delay was.
Not as I understand it.
Is the ARC concerned about the reputational risk for Australian research as a result of unexplained delays in ministerial approval?
Senator, you're asking me for an opinion. The Minister is the decision maker, and we will always try and provide the best information we can to support the Minister's decision.
I'm asking because I know that obviously with these delays that are unexplained, there's so many international organizations involved as well. There's a lot of stress and anxiety that is involved with researchers as well. So, and are you concerned about that? And I'm asking as ARC, it's like you do understand or you agree that there is a lot of stress and anxiety that researchers go through as a result of these delays, especially if they remain unexplained.
Senator, we do understand that, and I'm a former researcher myself, so I do understand the grant cycle as an applicant and recipient as well. I'm sorry, you asked a question there as well.
Yeah,
are we concerned? Yes,
yeah.
Of course. We want to always do the best we can to support researchers, and nobody wins when a grant is declined. We understand that.
So I guess, is there a message that you would like to convey to those researchers of the two delayed projects? I know researchers pay fairly close attention to Senate estimates, so they might welcome a reassurance that ARC acknowledges that the current state of affairs is unsatisfactory and unsustainable.
Senator, I would need to be careful saying more beyond. We do understand that researchers are stressed when grants are delayed, and that researchers should be assured that the ARC is doing everything it can to support them within our guidelines and within government processes, but we are doing everything we can.
Minister, could you say anything to reassure those researchers that there will be an explanation and it's unsatisfactory otherwise?
Look, I don't accept the premise of your question in the sense that coping with the waiting time associated with an application is part of the resilience we need as people who are participating in a research system that
their livelihoods might depend on that in many instances.
I understand. And in many ways grants are not assured. They are a privilege really that is funded by...
They should be assured when the experts have...
We have been at pains for the last few days to avoid interjecting quite rudely over the top of witnesses and ministers.
Sorry,
if we can please
I did not
allow... You certainly did, Senator Faruqi. So if we can please have a cordial discourse, I think it's the last day, I'd appreciate if you could...
Sorry, Chair, point of order. There was no rudeness at all in what I said, and we are having a discussion here.
If we could, there's always an exchange of information between the table and here, but if we could be mindful of allowing people to sort of finish their sentences before clarifying questions are put. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
There's a few things we can say about this. The first is to say that it's a usual thing that there is a lead time in the approvals process. Researchers who are participating in the process understand that, and I dare say most of them are very used to that. They know it's a competitive process. They know that the outcomes they're not assured of getting what they are seeking because of that competitive process. The grants were approved, and so I'd have to take issue with your characterisation. And in circumstances where the people involved ultimately received the grants that they were hoping to, and the lead times in the approvals were not wildly out of the ordinary, I'd suggest that there's nothing unusual about the circumstance you're describing.
It is quite unusual, Minister, but we leave it at that. When a minister, intervenes and interferes, that's unusual. I just want to go to the question of research commercialization. And I'm interested in the ARC's role in the department's research commercialization agenda and scoping study, which I understand currently is underway. Is there any role that the ARC has played there or will play?
Senator, clearly we're in regular touch with our departmental colleagues. We're not a member of the Commercialisation Task Force. We are a small agency.
So you will be consulted in the process?
That would be a question for the department.
Okay. Will the ARC be consulted? Is there a plan for ARC to have a role?
Rob Heffron, Deputy Secretary, Higher Education, Research and International, Department of Education, Skills and Employment. Sorry, mouthful there. Yes, of course. Through the process of, as Professor Thomas has said, we've, well, maybe putting words in my mouth, we had some discussions about the issue generally, not specifically, when the government gets to the stage of how in particular it's going to start reshaping the research agenda to fulfil the ambitions the Minister Tudge has laid out. The ARC's expertise will be very important in that, and we'll make sure it's consulted thoroughly.
I'm asking these questions to the ARC because, of course, you know, your main purpose is to grow knowledge and innovation for the benefit of Australian community. So have you read the government consultation paper?
We have seen part of the information that's been put out.
So the consultation paper, this is the one I'm talking about. And have you read any of the sector's submissions to the scoping study?
Not as yet, Senator.
Okay. And again, like I say, I'm asking you because I'm interested in your views on the criticism that has been levelled at an aggressive focus on research commercialisation. So, for instance, the Academy of Humanities submission to the research commercialisation consultation shares concerns of a lot of public health colleagues who have also previously made, laid out their concerns. And that submission of the Academy of Humanities particularly says that the proposed scheme should not come at the expense of the core enabling research capabilities across the disciplines, which are needed for the whole system to function effectively. Is this a position shared by the ARC?
So, Senator, certainly rather than a position of the ARC, the ARC's continuing remit is to fund research across the spectrum from basic research through to applied research. And we will continue to do that. So there may well be a focus on commercialisation in some particular policy positions, but the ARC will continue that broad funding, including funding of fundamental research.
I just want to put forward some of the concerns from the public health experts. So the Public Health Association, I haven't seen their submission yet on this particular piece of consultation work, but in 2015 they made a submission about research commercialization and said an increased overall emphasis on research commercialization has real potential to lead to unintended outcomes, which could in fact detract from a goal of improving Australians' health. It also states that while research likely to contribute to improved population health typically gives no or very little scope of commercialization, it does improve community health with the cascading impact of healthier communities. Is the ARC concerned about health research, and particularly if there's an aggressive focus on commercialization?
Thank you, Senator. So the ARC funds everything across the disciplines with the exception of clinical medicine. So our concern in the health space is whether it fits within our remit or that of our sister organisation, the NHMRC. But certainly within the remit of the ARC, there is health research. Some of it is multidisciplinary, some of it is about social impact on communities of particular health policies, etc. And we will continue to fund that sort of research.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Senator Rennick.
Hi, how are you going?
Hello.
My questions are around the funding rules in regards to the definition of research when people apply for grants, and in particular the definition of what I suppose you call new knowledge versus knowledge that tests or funding for testing the creation of that new knowledge. So I guess what I'm talking about here is there's a bit of a replication crisis going on in the Great Barrier Reef at the moment. There's been a lot of research reports out that haven't been able to be replicated, and that affects my constituents up in Queensland. In the Great Barrier Reef inquiry, for example, we were told that there was 60% confidence intervals in the measuring of some of this data, and that's a concern, because obviously if you had 10 farmers go up, because they've been prosecuted by the Queensland Government for runoff, for example, that would mean that only 6 of them would be correctly prosecuted and 4 could be incorrectly prosecuted. So I guess my question is it possible to extend the definition of funding research to also include testing of research data opposed to just new data, or creative, the creation of new knowledge, which is under the definition?
So thank you for the question, Senator. In our grant guidelines, we do have a definition of research, which is presumably consistent with the broader government definition. Creation of new knowledge and or the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way so as to generate new concepts, methodologies, inventions and understandings. This could include synthesis and analysis of previous research to the extent that it is new and creative.
That's right. So I've had feedback from academics that when they've tried to get funding for replication research, that they were excluded from that funding because of that definition.
So, Senator, I would welcome any specific examples that you were able to give us of that. In different fields of research, there is often a reiteration of study, whether it's on a particular site or using a particular methodology, but there's a new component to it, and that might be accuracy of a new method, it might be comparing it to something different. You could imagine that there is an overlap in a new study that is acceptable, but that then it takes knowledge further. So if you have an example of somebody who's been pinged because it's deemed unoriginal, we'd be very happy to answer that.
Awesome.
On the side.
I'll put that as a question on notice.
Okay,
with the details on that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rennick. I'll go back to you, Senator Carr.
Thomas, you said before, officers reported that the return to order was signed on the 22nd of December by Minister Tehan. That's correct, isn't it?
I believe that's what he said.
That's the day in which he was sworn in his new roles. I presume he signed this on the way out the door. Is that what happened?
Well, I couldn't say, Senator.
Thank you. Can I just come back to this issue about these files being kept on academics? So to be clear, you've suggested to me that this is just routine matters in terms of grant applications. Have I understood you correctly?
I believe I said, Senator, that when we're making a batch of recommendations, we will screen for sensitivities.
Yes.
And then separate to that, when people are applying, they do input information about themselves into our research management system.
So the information in these files comes from the applicants. Is that the suggestion you're making to the committee?
Applicants put in some personal information, and certainly when we're making recommendations, we do a scan for sensitivities on a bunch of criteria.
Well, that's the interesting bit. What is the criteria that you scan for?
So we scan for items in the public domain that might be
newspaper items?
It could be a range of things. Certainly we've also been working with security agencies to inform the sorts of scans that we do. So it's information provided by the security agencies? I believe it's information on the sorts of things that we should look for. Yes, about individuals I'm talking about. I'll just swap over to the appropriate officer, Senator.
Sorry, Senator. Kylie Emery, Branch Manager, Australian Research Council. So we undertake, as the CEO has been talking about, a range of scans And there is information which is, developed through sensitivities and information which has been published in the media in the past, which we look at just so that everyone is aware if there's been issues in the past.
Yes, that's so from newspaper items. Yep. Are there any other sources of information that you provide for these files?
I don't believe so, Senator.
You've indicated that in your evidence, Ms Emery, to the Joint Committee that there are other sources of advice. I'd like to know what...
Absolutely, Senator. So that's quite a different question to whether there are files on people.
No. I'm talking specifically about your evidence.
Yep.
If you want to, I can...
It's a little while ago, Senator, so...
Yes, all right. This is evidence you provided, page 42 of the Hansard, to be clear. Information you provided in regard to the potential sensitivities of individuals and organisations, and you indicated that universities, that would build the file to provide it to the Minister. Is that correct? This information goes to the Minister?
So, Senator, the process that we are using, so you'll appreciate that, and as the evidence that we gave in the joint inquiry, was that we're on a bit of an evolution in terms of our process.
Yes.
And so the process that we used last year has changed. And so I can talk about our new process that might be more helpful.
Ms Emery, let me talk about the evidence you've presented so far. Let's
absolutely.
be clear about these files. I'm interested in these files that you've referred to, recorded on the public record here, where you say information is indicated potential sensitivities result of information on our records. And this is information that comes from newspapers or other means.
Certainly, Senator, so I can
What
take you
did
through
you mean by other means?
So the other things that we refer to is whether there's a person or entity which has been listed on the sanctions regime list, which is held on the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade website, or whether it's a person or entity on the consolidated list issued under the Autonomous Sanctions Act of 2011, which is also listed on the Department of Foreign Affairs Trade website, and whether there has been an organisation, whether there's an affiliation with an organisation which has been listed on the China Defence Universities tracker.
Right, on the tracker. So ASPI, you ask ASPI whether or not people should get a grant, do you?
We look at, so Senator, I think it's the evidence that I gave at the inquiry was that we look at all that information, determine whether there is a potential sensitivity, and if there is a potential sensitivity, then we seek further advice from our national security experts as to whether there's an actual concern.
So these issues that you referred to, they go to the Minister?
It all depends, Senator, on what the advice might be back from national security agencies. If there's no actual concern, there is no necessity to refer that to. Right. There is no necessity to refer that to the Minister. So,
individual academic records are referred to the Minister?
Only as part of an application process, Senator.
So their individual records do go to the Minister, if they are part of the sensitivity?
If there is a sensitivity, Senator, we would be alerting the Minister that there is a sensitivity involved, but that has to be a fairly high bar.
With the individual?
Well, if there's an individual named on a application or an organisation named on the application, which gives rise to a concern, then that is referred to the Minister.
Thank you. Does the individual get the chance
Sorry, not referred to, advised to the Minister.
That's right, sure. Does the individual get the opportunity to respond to the issues raised in this sensitivity?
So that is what I think Ms Dent was talking about before in relation to the discovery and linkage projects that did occur.
No, the university got the response, not the individual.
So, Senator, as you would appreciate, it is the university that applies for
I understand exactly who the applicant is.
And so the applicant is provided the opportunity to respond to any concerns.
Can you repeat that? Does the individual get the opportunity to respond to your reports regarding these sensitivities?
And Senator, as I've just been explaining, the applicant is the university, and the university was provided with an opportunity to respond to sensitivities which were identified.
Well, the trouble is, you see, you relied on the tracker, and the tracker in its own disclaimer says the publisher is not engaged in rendering any form of professional or other advice to services. No person should rely on the contents of this publication without first obtaining advice from a qualified professional.
Precisely, Senator, and hence why I have talked about we'd use it as a raising a potential sensitivity. If there is a sensitive raise, we seek advice from the experts.
You are supposed to be the experts.
We are the experts on academic excellence, Senator. We are not the experts on national security issues.
And I want to know whether or not the individual gets the right of natural justice and procedural fairness in an adverse report that you have relied upon, which can lead to the person not getting their grant.
And Senator, we've talked about the process we undertook in relation to the discovery and linkage projects last year, the 18, where natural justice was provided back to the institutions.
To the individual.
So, Senator, as you would appreciate, it is the institution that is the applicant, not the individual.
And do these files, are they accessible through FOI?
Well, any information can be sought through FOI, Senator, whether it's released.
Have you sought legal advice as to whether or not you are in fact compliant with natural justice and procedural fairness?
Senator, I need to take that on notice.
Thank you. Apart from the tracker, what other source of information do you rely upon?
So I was just talking about the sanctions regime. Where,
you mentioned those things. Are there any other forms of advice that you rely upon?
Well, there's also the assessments of the information undertaken through the RMS profile, which we've already been talking about, where people make a range of declarations. We also have issues which have arisen through our post-awards, so in relation to previous grants which have been provided, or through research and integrity issues, as well as notifications which have been provided by universities which may occur as part of their due diligence.
Have any of these individuals named in these grants been subject to the 57 requests for repayments?
So, Senator, the 57 requests for payments were in relation to applications actually granted.
Yes, I know that.
I'm not sure whether we haven't done a
cross-reference check. But you just told me you have. This is information you rely upon. You surely tell me whether or not any of these 57.
Senator, I'm happy to take it on notice.
Thank you. And have any of these persons been subject to any breaches of the Defence Control Act?
I need to take that on notice.
We couldn't possibly be.
Senator Carr, please.
Possibly have been.
Senator Carr, sorry, Professor Thomas was answering the question there.
That's right.
Thank you, Chair.
But you can't take it on notice on something she knows the answer to.
Senator Carr, Senator Carr, Professor Thomas was answering the question, and I think she got, at the second attempt, I think 3 words out before you interrupted again. Professor Thomas, please.
Mr. Chairman, Ms Emery sought to take something on notice which she knows the answer to.
Senator Carr, Professor Thomas has the call and is assisting the committee. Professor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. As I believe I said earlier in my testimony, we are not aware that there have been any breaches of the Defence Trade Control Act.
And you say you're not aware. I'd put it to you more strongly than I think you agreed before. There have been no breaches.
Yes, Senator, I did.
No, that's right. So I mean, don't complain words games with us on this matter. I could ask you, in regard to the questions that have been raised on the Talents program, is there... You've provided advice to the committee on several occasions now in regard to the 1,000 Talents program or talent recruitment programs lead you to believe that there's been any security breaches. Have you discovered any?
Senator, I think I need to take that on notice. I'm not quite sure.
No, I see. Is it illegal to be a member of a 1,000 Talents program?
No, Senator.
No. It's been... I'm just wondering if you've had these files now collected, since July 2018, is that right?
Well, the RMS profiles have existed for
No, the files on individuals.
Senator, we've collected sensitivities for many years for various ministers.
How long have you been collecting the newspaper clippings from ASPI?
I'm not sure we do collect the newspaper clippings from ASPI, Senator.
I think you just said you did, from the tracker.
We use the tracker, which is not a set of newspaper clipping. It's
It's the basis for the Australian reports, which you use quite regularly, and you indicated in your evidence to the JASPE committee. That was the basis, the Australian articles, which relied upon ASPE's reports.
So, Senator, it wasn't just in relation to the Australian articles, it's in relation to a range of media inquiries, and I'm more than happy to talk about the process that we undertook in relation to those media
I'll take that through in a minute, but I just want to be clear. The articles you refer to in that evidence is the Australian, regularly, the Australian. And the Australians relied upon the ASPE reports. I'm just wondering, how long have you been relying upon those media reports from Mr Murdoch's newspapers to identify sensitivities on Australian researchers, which you say you've not been able to secure one breach of a national security matter?
So, Senator, the ARC has scanned for breaches since before my time as CEO, and that has included things in the public domain, as we have discussed previously, in the interests of a no surprises briefing.
When did you meet Mr Josby?
Let me just check those. We have met with I have met with Mr Josky on 2 occasions, Senator. The first date was on the 1st of September 2020, and the second date was with the Chief Executive Officer on the 10th of February 2021.
So the 2 occasions, I'm sorry I didn't catch those dates.
1st of September 2020, and that was myself and another officer in the ARC, and on the 10th of February 2021, the Chief Executive Officer, myself and another officer also met with him.
And I presume Mr Josby provided information regarding his accusations published in the Australian and published through the University Tracker?
Senator, we did not receive that information from Mr Josby.
What didn't he provide? Well, what was the point of the meeting?
The point of the meeting, Senator, was to seek further information from Mr Josky, and so the first meeting that happened on the 1st of September was just subsequent to the release of the Hunting the Phoenix report. We sought a meeting with Mr Josky, and at that meeting we talked about our processes that we have in place in relation to research matters. On the second meeting, that was subsequent to the submission to the Joint Parliamentary Inquiry, and one of the questions that was asked of Mr Josky was to provide the information contained, provide the background of the information he contains in his submission to the inquiry.
And did he provide that information?
No, Senator.
How long has he had to provide that information?
Senator, that was the sole meeting I had had with Mr Josky. I had previously written to ASPE, to the CEO, Mr Jennings, to ask the same question, and then we did meet with Mr Josky and I asked the same question. So, and Mr Josky doesn't work for ASPE anymore, does he? He's moved on. You don't know the circumstances? No, Senator, I don't.
Thank you. And so let's be clear, when did you start using the University Tracker as a source of information for these sensitivity files?
Senator, I need to take that on notice.
Well, surely it's after the 25th of November when it was published.
Presumably it was, Senator.
Yes. When do the academics get a chance to respond to each of the specific matters that you've raised in these sensitivity files? Can you give me details of those, please?
Certainly, Senator. So I'll go back to the Discovery and Linkage Projects scheme that was run last year. Subsequent to the Selection Advisory Committee meeting, which assessed each of the applications in relation to the excellence of the application, the team undertook an assessment in terms of any potential sensitivities, and as I think has previously been advised, those 18 grant applications, there was advice sought back from the institutions in relation to those sensitivities prior to a briefing provided to the Minister.
So that's the 5 that were rejected, right?
Well, there were 18 and then, yes, there were 5.
There's 5 that were rejected. That's the ones I'm interested in. Presumably, when were they specifically given an opportunity to respond?
at the same time as the rest of the 13 out of that 18.
All right. Can you give me the details of the individuals that are concerned with the institutions that were of the 5 grant applications that were rejected? If you like, I can list them.
Senator, I don't have that level of detail with me, so I need to take it on notice.
No, thank you. Of course, I expect that. That's not unreasonable. Now, Mr Joski's accused 59 of our scholars. Have you got files on all the 59?
Well, Senator, we don't know who the 59 are, so we are
Many of them
unaware
were published on the front page of Australia. Surely you have files on those.
So, Senator, there, I think, were, if we're talking about the article on the 24th of August last year, I think there were 32 allegations, 32 researchers who were named, who weren't all funded by the ARC.
Yes. You kept files on all of those?
Well, Senator, they do come up as a list of our potential sensitivities, and as I was talking about before, we're happy to go through the process that we undertook at that time, if that's of help.
I just want to know, have you kept files on the 32 that received ARC grants?
Well, Senator, they've been named as a sensitivity,
so the answer's
and
yes.
then we undertook further investigations.
And have you found any breaches of any of their grants?
So, Senator, I can advise that 31 of those 32 related to researchers who have been at some time named on an ARC grant, and that could be some time from quite a
They've been acquitted
ago.
some years ago.
Yes, some years ago, so the grants would have been finalised. We have finalised 30 of those cases, and there's 2 cases ongoing.
And you're, still inquiring into 2? Is that the
we're
point
working
of the
with
ongoing? That's what you mean by ongoing?
Absolutely, we're working with the institution in relation to those
cases.
cases.
So the 30 that you've finalised, have you found any issues with the 30?
Senator, I'd need to take that on notice.
You've told J Scott that there are no issues. Was that correct or not?
Well, Senator, that's a couple of months ago, and I think since then there's been a few cases which have been finalised. So I need to take it on notice.
Is it the case that did you tell J Scott that of those that you'd finalised, the 30 that you'd finalised, there were no issues?
I think that was in relation to national security, Senator.
Oh, I see.
And by the way, so I just want to clarify, at the time of the joint inquiry hearing, I do believe that we still had a few outstanding.
You said 2 outstanding.
We have 2 outstanding now.
You had 2 outstanding then?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, were any problems with the other 30?
Senator, I'll need to take the detail of that on notice.
Well, you told J Scott there were none. I'm just wondering, is there something developed since then?
Senator, as I've just talked about, there were, I don't believe we identified any national security issues, but there may have been other issues identified.
You see, these people's names have been pilloried, right? They have been subject to shocking libels on the front page of the Australian newspaper based on an extraordinary document produced by Mr Jaspi through ASPI, funded by a foreign government, and you've now indicated in your investigation that 30 of the 32 there are no issues, or certainly that's what you presented to the Joint Committee, and I'm wondering, has there been any change in that status?
So, Senator, as I explained, there have been no national security issues identified, but I'm taking a notice the detail of whether there are other issues identified.
Right. You see, do you think the Australian Research Council has any responsibility to actually defend the reputation of our scholars?
Senator, we all want research as an endeavour to be seen as an endeavour with integrity, of course.
But don't you have that endeavour of integrity, does that integrity also go to defending the reputations of our scholars? If you've found no issues after the scholars have been subject to this public McCarthyist shaming, aren't they entitled to at least a statement from you to say we've had no issues? We've investigated it and we've found no issue?
Senator, we have been considering this since our earlier discussions. We're always mindful of people's privacy. Even if you're saying something good, you still need to be careful of their privacy and thinking about what high-level reporting we might be able to devise into the future, which does give the public an understanding that issues have been looked into, that they've been investigated and that they have been closed, and without going as close to each individual, does provide information that there are no ongoing
There's no respect for their privacy when they are pilloried on the front page of a national newspaper. And you were accused of funding, effectively, collaborators with a foreign power. There was no respect there. Surely they're entitled to some recognition now that you've made your investigations and found that there's no case to answer.
So, Senator, I just add that the checks which the ARC undertakes is only in relation to ARC grants, so there may be other issues. And I'm not saying that there are, but there may be. But also to note that they are employed by universities, and I do note that some of the universities have come out in defence of their researchers.
Yeah, not that many. And that's part of the issue here. But I'll take that up with the Vice-Chancellors. The question is what your responsibilities are, given your administration of public funding, and it was in fact I would have thought, defence of your own practices, given what the Auditor General has said about you. You're entitled to defend your own administrative practices because you're also in the gun by suggesting that you've done something improper, you're incompetent, and suggestions that, the way these reports read, that you've done the wrong thing. Surely you're entitled to even defend your own integrity.
So, Senator, that is why we work with employing institutions to undertake investigations. But as I mentioned earlier, it's also why we have been considering what reporting we can do in a public space to increase transparency in the future.
All right. Well, you say you're interested in transparency, but you also tell me you can give me no reasons why these grants were actually refused. How do you reconcile those two propositions?
Well, Senator, that would be a decision for the Minister.
So they're just the political interference. That's all I can draw on.
That's actually not what the witness has said, and that is an unfair imputation. I think, Minister, you're about to say something.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Chair?
Senator Carr.
Thank you. The matters that relate to the critical and emerging technologies policy, can you tell me, how many meetings has the ARC had with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet about the new critical and emerging technology policy?
I think, Senator, I've provided previous evidence. I think it was 2.
2, thank you. And if I ask you a question about this in terms of the range of issues that are now canvassed on the scope of the critical technologies list. There's hundreds of your grant applications would be caught up in that. Given your discussions with security agencies, what is your understanding of the government's intended plans to regard the regulations of higher education and research sector in regard to the critical technologies?
I don't believe we have an understanding of that, Senator.
You've got none at all?
Sorry, Senator, I missed
None
that.
at all?
Well, Senator, we've talked in relation to the creation of a list of technologies which are important to Australia, but beyond that, you would need to, I think, address those questions to the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet.
And in regard to the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act, have you had any understanding of the implications for the ARC on that matter?
No, Senator.
I don't think so, Senator.
Well, you've done no assessment?
Not on that matter, no, Senator.
What's your understanding of the difference between critical technologies and critical infrastructure?
I could only give you a personal account of that, Senator, that in critical technologies, I understand the government seeks to identify a range of existing or emerging technologies where it may have a sovereign interest and want a competitive advantage. Infrastructure could be the array of tech and kit that supports that.
So you're reviewing grant applications. Presumably this will have an impact as well on your recommendations?
Sorry, what will have an impact, Senator?
The questions of critical technologies lists and critical infrastructure lists, will that have an impact on your approach to grant application approvals?
So, Senator, we will follow government policy as it evolves, and it's not clear what that will be at the moment. Our expertise is in funding excellence, which we do through the peer or expert review process.
and it won't be overridden by these lists. You know, the question number 21 from last round, 2179, I actually, that identified the fields. It would involve hundreds of your grants.
Certainly there may well be a lot of coverage, just based on what we've seen so far.
Have you provided advice as to the consequence of that?
So, Senator, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, have you provided advice as to the implications of a list on critical technologies of such breadth?
I don't believe we have in those 2 meetings that Ms Emery has had.
So what was the point of the meetings?
The meetings were around discussing the development of the list and also to provide information to the Department of Foreign Affairs cover how much coverage that would be in terms of ARC grants at the moment.
Do you provide advice through the Department of Education?
No, Senator, I think we had a direct conversation.
Direct conversation. So that's all we can look to, right? So you do know the question I'm speaking of, number 79. Now,
I don't have it with me, Senator.
Would you have a look at that for me for a moment, please?
Someone has it. Hang on, Senator. Oh, yes, Senator.
Is that an accurate reflection of the breadth of the list?
I'm not sure, Senator. It looks... I'm not sure, Senator. It's a while since I've looked at the actual list itself.
Yeah. Are you aware whether or not the list has been narrowed since that question was put on notice?
I'm not aware, Senator.
But your answer stands? That's the breadth of it?
Certainly in terms of the fields that the question identified, we would stand by the data that's been provided.
So in terms of biological sciences, 295, artificial intelligence, 98 grants. This is just this year. 95 in ICT, autonomous systems, 22, communications, 36, sensing, 76, navigation, 8, aerospace, 17, advanced materials, 91, power generator production, 68, advanced manufacturing, 238. I mean, that's an extraordinary number.
We fund a huge diversity of things, as you know, Senator.
Yes, you do. The implications. How many staff are part of the Foreign Interference Task Force? Have you got any? You said you had none at all. Was that right?
No, we had, I think, 3 at last estimates. We're now down to 2.
2. Why is what's happened there?
To the staffing?
Yeah, why have we reduced the staffing?
Well, Senator, we are between big bodies of work at the moment, and it wasn't sufficient work to keep the 3 people occupied, but clearly you can draw on resources across the agency as it needs.
I see. And that task force, that's separate from the meetings that you've had with the PM&C?
I think I was in my role as branch manager of policy and strategy when I had those meetings, Senator.
So I just want to be clear. You've had meetings with PM&C, and then there's a task force operating. Are they 2 separate bodies?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So the grants due diligence task force is separate.
So how many meetings of the task force have there been?
Well, Senator, my remaining staff and I meet quite regularly.
They're existing ARC staff, Senator. They're not new staff, and they're not staff who were without other functions in the agency.
No, I'm talking about the Foreign Interference Task Force. How many have you got on that?
Senator, the ARC doesn't have a Foreign Interference Task Force. We have a Grants Due Diligence Task Force.
And that's the group of 3 that is now 2.
I see. And that you chair that, is that right?
Well, I head it, yes, Senator.
Oh, right. Okay. And that meets...
Thanks.
How often does that meet?
Well, Senator, it's one of my staff members and myself, so we meet quite regularly. Could be twice a day, could be once a day, or... Not at all a day.
Okay. All right, thank you. Time's running out, so I'll need to put the rest on notice. I'm just wondering about these two linkage grants, the humanitarian crisis grant, this is number 46, and Sparking the Imagination grant, number 755. These were both the University of Queensland. One was Queensland and one was Sydney. And you're saying that they were approved last Friday. That's correct?
Yes, Senator.
All right. Now, that was announced, was it?
Certainly the universities were contacted and it was announced through our research management system.
I see. It was a website announcement.
Yes.
Right. Why was it delayed? Why were both of those grants delayed? What was the reason?
I couldn't say, Senator. That's a question for the Minister.
But at ministerial level, were they?
There were decisions pending when the bulk of the other grants that they were part of the same round as were announced. Yes, those two were pending.
This more of the transparency that we're speaking about?
No, they were pending ministerial decisions, Senator.
I mean, these extraordinary academics, what was there a sensitivity here that were identified? What was the...
No, Senator.
So what's the issue then?
I couldn't tell you.
You had no indication whatsoever as to why Indigenous Education Grant and an aid program grant were held up.
Correct.
And you think that's a ministerial, entirely a matter for the Minister? So it's a question to the Minister is what you're putting to me.
It is a question to the Minister, Senator.
Senator Carr, I'm happy to take on notice that matter, but it's relevant to say that the Minister will do whatever due diligence is necessary to make sure that the decisions on grants that are being made are done in the interests of Australian taxpayers.
Okay, so Senator Stoker, you since you've chosen to intervene here, you can tell me that it had nothing to do with the prejudicial attitude taken by the government towards these group of researchers.
I highly doubt it, but I've taken it on notice.
Yeah, and you'd be aware of what esteem these researchers are actually held internationally.
I accept that, but none of that changes the Minister's duty to thoroughly investigate and make a decision after taking into account all the due diligence required to make a call in the interest of taxpayers.
So Professor Thomas, they were recommended for approval by the ARC?
They were recommended, Senator.
Did you identify any sensitivities?
I don't believe so, no.
There were no other matters that needed special due diligence attention?
No, Senator.
That would, because it would pick up any sensitivity there, wouldn't it, if that was the case?
Yes.
So they went forward with all the other linkage grants in the normal manner?
Yes, Senator.
With unremarked?
Yes, Senator.
So, Senator Stoker, perhaps you could explain to us what special due diligence was required, given the ARC's recommendation was that they should be paid without any due diligence questions being drawn to the Minister's attention.
Well, I didn't say that special due diligence was required. I said that due diligence is applied in all circumstances, and that takes as long as it takes to get it right. I've taken the rest on notice, and you will be informed in due course. So
was there any additional information sought, Ms Thomas, from the Minister?
Yes, Senator.
Well, what was that in regard to what?
The additional information included full application and letters of partner support.
Oh, I see. So what? The full the actual detail of the scholars?
The project section.
Including their files?
No, Senator.
The application itself.
The full application from the University of Sydney and...
the project section of the application and...
It's worth noting, though, that once that due diligence was complete, the projects you're referring to were recommended and they were funded. So I suspect the process did what it is meant to do.
I see. Professor Thomas, are there any other additional information sought apart from the application form filled in by the universities?
It was information related to the project and the partner letters of support. That was it, Senator.
Can you please explain to me what you mean by information related to the project?
The project description.
Description, but off the forms, off the application.
Yes.
No additional assessment, reviews, evaluation was sought?
No.
And did you change your recommendation in any way as a part of that process?
No, Senator.
No. And this took 3 months. So the post office that slow?
We released outcomes last Friday.
I see. Yes, I know that, but it took 3 months. 3 months to do this assessment.
We didn't do any additional assessment, Senator.
No, you didn't, but the minister did. I'm just trying to establish, Senator Stoker, if you can explain to us why it took 3 months. You can take that on notice as well. 3 months, given the information that was provided, was the additional material in an application. Presumably all this stuff was put on the application form itself, wasn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, that's it. So,
It's already taken on notice.
Yeah.
This is a reframed version of your earlier question.
And I'll be looking forward to an explanation for why it takes 3 months to assess something like this. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there and put the rest of my questions on. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. We have, Senator Neal, do you have questions in this area?
Yes, I do. Have a couple. Thank you.
Okay, that's helpful. So we'll be finishing here at 10:30 and then going on to the Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency. Senator